The rain had stopped an hour ago, but the mud remained. Lyra picked her way through the forest clearing, her boots squelching with each step. The old war wound in her left leg throbbed, a reminder of battles fought light years away, when humanity had first pushed into the outer sectors and learned that the galaxy was far stranger than anyone had imagined. She'd retired to this backwater moon precisely because it was supposed to be quiet. No aliens, no politics, no wars, just her, a small cabin, and enough solitude to finally sleep without dreaming of plasma fire. That plan lasted exactly 3 months. The mud pool ahead of her was unusual, too circular, too deep, and emanating a faint heat that created wisps of steam in the cool morning air. Lyra approached cautiously, one hand resting on the pulse pistol at her hip. Old habits died hard. Then she saw them. 3 figures lay half-submerged in the mud, their bodies coated in thick brown sludge. But even through the muck, Lyra could see they weren't human. The proportions were wrong, too tall, too angular, and there were scales. Iridescent scales that caught the filtered sunlight and shimmered with colors that had no names in human languages. "Holy hell," Lyra muttered, moving closer. The nearest figure stirred. A hand, delicate but tipped with retractable claws, emerged from the mud and reached weakly toward her. Lyra knelt, ignoring the mud soaking through her pants, and grasped the hand. It was hot to the touch, feverish. "Easy," Lyra said, her voice falling into the calm tone she'd used with wounded soldiers. "I've got you." She pulled, and the figure rose from the mud with a wet sucking sound. A woman, or something like a woman, emerged. Her features were sharp and elegant, with small horns curving back from her temples. Wings, tattered and muddy, hung limply from her shoulders. Her eyes opened vertical slits in pools of molten gold. "Human," the woman rasped in heavily accented galactic standard. "You shouldn't be here." "Yeah, well, I am." Lyra helped her to solid ground. "What happened to you?" Before the dragon woman could answer, one of the others in the pool cried out a sound of pure terror that made Lyra's combat instincts flare to life. She spun, hand on her pistol. The second dragon woman was sitting up now, pointing at something in the mud with a trembling claw. "Soren! Where is Soren?" Lyra's eyes followed the gesture. There, partially hidden by a fallen log, was another figure. This one wasn't moving. "Stay here," Lyra commanded, already moving. She waded into the mud pool, the warm muck rising to her knees, then her thighs. The figure, Soren, apparently was face down, completely still. Lyra reached her and turned her over. The dragon woman's face was pale beneath the mud, her breathing shallow, but alive. Barely. "Help me get her out," Lyra shouted to the others. The first dragon woman tried to stand but collapsed. We can't. The poison weakens us. You don't understand. We were ambushed." That's when Lyra saw it. An arm. It emerged from the mud behind Soren, massive and segmented like an insect's limb. It was covered in chitinous plates that gleamed black and green, and it reached for Soren with terrible purpose. Lyra didn't hesitate. She drew her pulse pistol and fired 3 times in rapid succession. The bolts of compressed energy struck the arm, and it recoiled with a screech that sounded like tearing metal. The mud erupted. What rose from the pool was a nightmare. 8 legs, each as thick as Lyra's torso, supported a body that was part spider, part something else entirely. Something that evolution had never intended. Multiple eyes clustered on a head that split open to reveal rows of crystalline teeth. Mandibles clicked together, dripping with luminescent venom. A scree harvester. Lyra had seen them during the war, but never one this large. They were supposed to be extinct in this sector. "Of course," Lyra growled. "Nothing's ever simple." She fired again, aiming for the eyes. The creature reared back, its screech loud enough to shake leaves from the trees, but it didn't retreat. Harvesters were ambush predators, yes, but they were also territorial, and Lyra was standing in its hunting ground. The dragon women behind her were crying out, trying to warn her in a language she didn't understand. But Lyra was already moving, She grabbed Soren under the arms and dragged her backward, pulse pistol firing one-handed to keep the harvester at bay. The creature lunged. Lyra dropped Soren and rolled to the side, coming up in a crouch. Her military training took over. Assess. Adapt. Act. The harvester's underbelly was less armored. Its joints were vulnerable, and it was sluggish in the mud, probably why it had ambushed the dragon women here. "Hey!" Lyra shouted, drawing its attention. "Over here, ugly." The harvester turned its cluster of eyes toward her. She could see intelligence there, cold and alien, calculating whether she was prey or threat. Lyra answered that question by shooting out two of its legs. The creature toppled sideways with a shriek. Lyra didn't give it a chance to recover. She charged forward, sliding under its thrashing body, and emptied her pistol's remaining charge into its exposed underbelly at point-blank range. The harvester convulsed once, twice, then went still. Green ichor oozed from the wounds, mixing with the mud. Lyra crawled out from under the corpse, covered in mud and alien blood, her legs screaming in protest. She limped back to Soren and the others. The first dragon woman was staring at her with wide eyes. You killed a harvester. Alone. With a hand weapon." "Yeah," Lyra panted, "and my back is going to remind me about it for weeks." She knelt beside Soren, checking her pulse. "Still alive. We need to get you three cleaned up and somewhere safe. Can you walk?" The dragon woman nodded slowly. "I am called Kessa. The one you saved is Soren. The third is my sister, Mira. We owe you our lives, human." "Lyra," she corrected. "And you don't owe me anything. Let's just get out of this mud hole before something else shows up." As she helped the three dragon women to their feet and guided them toward her cabin, Lyra couldn't help but laugh quietly to herself. So much for a quiet retirement. But as Soren squeezed her hand weakly, and Kessa looked at her with something like awe, Lyra realized she didn't mind. Some people were meant for peace. Others were meant to stand between the monsters and those who couldn't fight back. Lyra had always known which one she was. And today, three dragon women learned what humanity meant when they said, "We protect our own." Even if our own happened to have scales, wings, and vertical pupils.